The smell of welding metal still clung to Holden's work clothes as he pushed open the front door of his house on Maple Street. The porch light cast a yellow glow across the peeling paint he'd been meaning to fix for months. Inside, the house felt cold despite the June heat outside. "I'm home," he called out, setting his toolbox by the door. Marla appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore the same jeans and green sweater she'd had on that morning. She looked at him with the same neutral expression she'd been wearing for weeks now. "Dinner's in the fridge," she said. "I already ate." Holden studied her face. "You could have waited. You said you'd be home by 6. It's almost 8. The Henderson job ran late. I told you that might happen." He walked toward the kitchen, expecting her to follow. She didn't. "Where's Nico?" "Upstairs. Homework." Holden pulled a plate from the refrigerator. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes covered in plastic wrap. Cold. He put it in the microwave and listened to it hum while Marla gathered papers from the counter. "How was your day?" he asked. "Fine. What did you do?" She paused, her hand hovering over a stack of mail. "Cleaned. Went to the store. Normal stuff." The microwave beeped. Holden took out his plate and sat at the kitchen table. The food was too hot on the outside, still cold in the middle. He ate anyway. "I'll go check on Nico," he said after finishing half the meal. Marla looked up from sorting through bills. "He's busy. It's been 3 days since we talked. Maybe there's a reason for that." Holden set down his fork. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just leave him alone tonight." He stood up, chair scraping against the linoleum floor. "He's my son, too." Marla's jaw tightened. "I know whose son he is." Holden climbed the stairs, each step creaking under his weight. Nico's door was closed, music playing softly inside. He knocked twice. "Yeah, it's Dad. Can I come in?" A pause. "I guess." Holden opened the door to find Nico sitting at his desk, pencil in hand, sketching in a notebook. The boy looked up briefly, then back down at his drawing. "What are you working on?" Holden sat on the edge of the bed. "Just drawing." "Can I see?" Nico hesitated, then turned the notebook around. It was a detailed sketch of the woods behind their house, but dark and twisted, with gnarled trees that looked like reaching hands. "That's really good," Holden said, meaning it. "You got that from your mom's side." Nico shrugged. "I guess." "How was school today?" "Fine. Just fine." "Yeah." Holden tried a different approach. "You want to come out to the garage this weekend? I'm rebuilding the engine on the Mustang. I don't know anything about cars. I could teach you." Nico finally looked up at him. "What?" The question caught Holden off guard. "Because we're family. Because I want to spend time with you. Mom says you work too much to care about family time." The words hit like a punch to the gut. "Your mom said that?" Nico looked uncomfortable. "I shouldn't have said anything." "No, it's okay. What else does she say?" "Nothing. Can I get back to my drawing now?" Holden stood up slowly. "Sure. Just remember, whatever your mom says, I love you. That never changes." "Okay." Holden left the room feeling like he'd failed some test he didn't know he was taking. Downstairs, Marla was loading the dishwasher with sharp, quick movements. "He barely talks to me anymore," Holden said. "Maybe if you were around more. I work to support this family. You were to avoid this family." She slammed a plate into the dishwasher. "That's not true." Marla turned to face him, her green eyes cold. "When's the last time you asked me how I felt about anything? I ask you every day how your day was. That's not the same thing." She dried her hands and walked toward the living room. "I'm watching my show." Holden followed her. "What do you want from me, Marla?" She picked up the remote and turned on the television. "Nothing. I don't want anything from you anymore." The words stung worse than he expected. He watched her settle into the couch, her attention fixed on the screen like he wasn't even there. "I'm going to take a shower," he said. She didn't respond. Later that night, Holden lay in bed listening to Marla breathe beside him. She'd come to bed an hour after him, moving quietly in the dark. Now she lay on her side, facing away from him, the space between them feeling like a canyon. Around midnight, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She reached for it quickly, the screen lighting up her face in the darkness. Holden kept his eyes mostly closed, watching through his lashes as she read something, then typed a response. The soft tapping of her fingers on the screen seemed loud in the quiet room. When she was done, she set the phone face down and settled back under the covers. But Holden had seen enough. The way she'd grabbed the phone so fast, the careful way she'd hidden the screen from him, the small smile that had crossed her face as she read whatever message had come through. Something cold settled in his stomach. He'd been married to Marla for 15 years. He knew her expressions, her habits, her tells. And right now, every instinct he had was screaming that something was wrong. The next morning, Holden stopped by Baked on Main before work. The smell of fresh bread and coffee hit him as soon as he walked through the door. Tessa looked up from behind the counter, flour dusting her dark hair. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," she said, grinning. "Let me guess, you want your usual. You know me too well." Holden leaned against the counter as she grabbed a coffee cup. "How's married life treating you?" Tessa poured the coffee and slid it across to him. "Same as always." "That bad, huh?" She studied his face. "You look tired. Just work stuff." Tessa grabbed a blueberry muffin from the display case. "On the house." "You're too skinny." "Thanks." Holden took a bite of the muffin. "Business good. Can't complain. Had Mrs. Patterson in here yesterday complaining about her neighbor's dog again. And I saw Marla at the Shell station out on Highway 12 on Tuesday." Holden paused mid-chew. "Tuesday?" "Yeah, around 2 in the afternoon. Thought it was weird since she doesn't usually drive out that way." "You sure it was her?" "Pretty sure. Green Honda, blonde hair. She was talking to some guy by the gas pumps." Tessa wiped down the counter. "Probably just getting gas." "Probably." But Holden's mind was racing. Tuesday afternoon, Marla had said she was home all day with a headache. And the Shell station on Highway 12 was 20 miles out of town, the opposite direction from anywhere she'd normally go. "Everything okay?" Tessa asked. "Yeah, just wondering." He finished his coffee and left money on the counter. "I better get to work." "Holden," Tessa called as he reached the door. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right? We've been through enough together." He looked back at his sister, remembering all the foster homes they'd survived, all the times they'd only had each other. "I know." At work, Holden found himself distracted. He was welding supports for a new construction project, but his mind kept drifting to Marla at that gas station. Who was the man Tessa had seen her talking to? And why hadn't she mentioned going anywhere on Tuesday? During his lunch break, he sat in his truck and thought about calling her. Instead, he found himself driving home. The house was empty when he got there, Marla's car gone. He checked the kitchen counter where she usually left notes. Nothing. He walked through the house, looking for something, though he wasn't sure what. In their bedroom, he opened the drawer where Marla kept her jewelry and papers. Everything looked normal. Too normal, maybe, like someone had been careful to put everything back exactly where it belonged. That evening, Marla announced she was going grocery shopping after dinner. "I'll come with you," Holden offered. "That's okay. You look tired. Just relax." She left at 7:30, giving him a quick kiss on the cheek that felt more like a duty than affection. Holden helped Nico with his math homework, then sat in the living room watching the clock. 8:30 came and went. Then 9. At 9:45, he heard the Honda pull into the driveway. Marla came through the door carrying 2 small grocery bags. "Long line at the store?" Holden asked. "Terrible." And they were restocking the produce section. She set the bags on the counter and started putting things away. "Milk, bread, a bag of apples." "That's it." "What?" 2 hours for milk and bread." Marla's hand paused on the refrigerator door. "I also stopped at the pharmacy. And I ran into Janet Miller. You know how she talks." Holden nodded, but something felt off. The groceries were cold enough, like they'd actually been in a store refrigerator. But Marla's story felt rehearsed. After she went upstairs to shower, Holden walked out to her car. The driver's seat was adjusted differently than usual, pushed further back. He checked the odometer and tried to remember what it had read that morning, but couldn't be sure. In the glove compartment, he found a receipt from the grocery store. The timestamp read 9:23 p.m., so she had been at the store, but only for the last 20 minutes of her 2-hour trip. Where had she been for the other hour and 40 minutes? Holden closed the car door and walked back inside, the weight of suspicion settling heavier on his shoulders. 2 days later, Holden was replacing the brake pads on his work truck when he heard the cars pull up. 3 vehicles: Sheriff Sloan's cruiser, Deputy Harker's patrol car, and an unmarked sedan. His hands stilled on the wrench as car doors slammed shut. Lance Harker appeared first, his face grim under his patrol cap. They'd known each other since high school, had played football together, shared beers on Friday nights before Lance became a cop, and Holden got married. Holden, Lance said, his voice careful and official. Lance. Holden wiped his hands on a rag and stood up. What's going on? Sheriff Sloan stepped forward, a heavy-set man with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much. Behind him came Detective Morris from the state police, a woman Holden didn't recognize. Holden Voss, Sheriff Sloan said, you're under arrest for the murder of your son, Nico Voss. The words didn't make sense. Holden looked from one face to another, waiting for someone to laugh, to tell him this was some kind of mistake. That's impossible, he said slowly. My son is. Mr. Voss, Detective Morris interrupted, you have the right to remain silent. Wait. Holden held up his hands. Wait just a minute. Nico is inside doing homework. This is crazy. Lance stepped forward, handcuffs ready. Holden, just cooperate. We'll sort this out. Sort what out? Holden's voice rose. My son is alive. He's in the house. As if summoned by his words, the front door opened. Marla stepped out, her face red and streaked with tears. She wore a black dress Holden had never seen before, and her hair was pulled back severely. Oh God, she said, her voice breaking. I can't believe this is happening. Holden stared at his wife. Marla, tell them. Tell them Nico is inside. Marla looked at him with an expression he'd never seen before, fear mixed with something else. Something that looked almost like triumph. Holden, she whispered, Nico is dead. The world tilted. What are you talking about? You killed him. Her voice got stronger. You killed our son. Turn around. Holden, Lance said quietly. Hands behind your back. No. Holden backed away. This is insane. Marla, what's wrong with you? Nico was at breakfast this morning. He was drawing at the table. Mr. Voss, Detective Morris said, we have evidence. Physical evidence. What evidence? Evidence of what? Your son's backpack was found in the woods. There was blood. Holden's mind raced. Then he's hurt. We need to find him. We found more than blood, Sheriff Sloan said. We found a wrench from your toolbox. Your prints are on it. Of course my prints are on it. It's my wrench. Holden looked at Lance, pleading. You know me. You know I would never hurt Nico. Lance's face was stone. I know what the evidence says. The evidence is wrong. Holden, Marla said, stepping closer, I know this is hard. But you've been so angry lately. So violent. Violent? Holden stared at her. When have I ever been violent? Last week, when you threw that glass against the wall. I set it down too hard. It slipped. And when you grabbed my arm. I never grabbed your arm. There are bruises, Marla said softly. I have pictures. The ground felt like it was shifting under Holden's feet. You're lying. And Nico was scared of you. He told me so. That's not true. He said you were getting worse. Angrier. He was afraid to be alone with you. Marla, stop. Holden's voice was hoarse. Why are you doing this? Detective Morris stepped forward. Mr. Voss, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Lance approached with the handcuffs again. Don't make me tackle you, Holden. Holden looked at his oldest friend, then at his wife, then at the other officers. 3 against 1, and they all believed he'd killed his own son. The son who'd been eating cereal at the kitchen table 6 hours ago. Where's Nico's body? He asked. We're still searching, Sheriff Sloan said. Because there is no body. Because he's not dead. Holden, Lance said gently, turn around. Holden felt the fight go out of him. Something was happening here, something bigger than he understood. But fighting now would only make it worse. He turned around and put his hands behind his back. The metal cuffs were cold against his wrists. I didn't hurt my son, he said as Lance led him toward the patrol car. I know, Lance whispered. I believe you. But right now I have to do my job. As they drove away, Holden looked back at his house. Marla stood on the porch, watching them go. Her tears had stopped, and her face was calm. For just a moment, she smiled. The Willow Creek jail had 4 cells, and Holden sat in the cleanest one, staring at gray concrete walls. Lance had brought him coffee and a sandwich from the diner, breaking protocol in small ways that said more than words could. The DA's coming down from Portland, Lance said, sitting backward in a metal chair. This is big, Holden. Murder of a child. I didn't kill anyone. I know that. But the evidence. What evidence exactly? Holden leaned forward. Tell me everything. Lance looked around, making sure they were alone. Nico's backpack was found near the old Henderson cabin. You know the one, been empty for years. Someone burned it down 2 nights ago, and there was blood inside. On the walls, the floor. A lot of blood. Holden's stomach turned. Whose blood? Lab says it matches Nico's blood type. DNA results will take longer. What else? A wrench from your toolbox. The big one with the blue handle. Your fingerprints are all over it. Holden closed his eyes, thinking, I've been missing that wrench for weeks. Thought I left it at a job site. Can you prove that? I mentioned it to Tessa. Asked if she'd seen it when she borrowed my tools to fix her sink. Lance made a note. That's something. What else? Lance, my son, is alive. I saw him yesterday morning. Marla says different. Marla's lying. Why would she lie about her own son being dead? Holden stared at his friend. I don't know, but she is. Lance was quiet for a long moment. There's more. Tell me. Marla says you've been violent. Angry. She showed Sheriff Sloan bruises on her arm. I never touched her. She has pictures. Then she got those bruises somewhere else. She also says Nico was afraid of you. That he'd been acting different, scared to be alone with you. Holden felt sick. That's not true either. She's got witnesses. Teachers at the school say Nico seemed withdrawn lately. Anxious. Because his parents were fighting. Because there's tension in the house. Not because I was hurting him. Lance nodded slowly. I want to believe you. Then help me prove it. How? Find my son. Find Nico. Because he's not dead. Holden, if he was alive, where would he be? Why hasn't he come home? I don't know. But I know he's alive. Lance stood up. I'll keep looking into things. Quietly. But officially, I have to follow the evidence. The evidence is planted. By who? Holden was quiet for a long time. I don't know yet. After Lance left, Holden lay on the narrow cot and tried to make sense of what was happening. Someone had taken Nico. Someone had burned down the cabin and planted evidence to frame him. Someone who had access to his tools, who knew his routines, who could manipulate the situation perfectly. Someone who wanted him out of the way. Tessa arrived at the jail the next morning carrying a thermos of coffee and a paper bag from her bakery. Her eyes were red, and her hands shook as she sat across from Holden in the visiting room. I can't believe this is happening, she said. I didn't do it. I know that. She poured coffee into a paper cup and pushed it across the table. But everyone else thinks you did. Where are people saying terrible things? That you snapped. That the pressure of being laid off got to you. I wasn't laid off. Marla told Mrs. Patterson you lost your job last month. That you've been drinking, coming home angry. Holden gripped the coffee cup until his knuckles went white. None of that is true. I know. But she's telling everyone who'll listen. What about Nico? What she's saying about Nico? Tessa's face crumpled. That he's dead. That you killed him in a rage and hid the body. She knows where he is. Holden. She knows where he is. Tessa. She's part of this. Part of what? I don't know yet. But she's lying about everything. Tessa leaned forward. You remember when we were kids? When the Hendersons tried to separate us? Yeah. You told me then that family sticks together no matter what. That we'd never let anyone break us apart. I remember. Well, I'm not letting them break us apart now. She pulled a small notebook from her purse. I've been asking questions. What kind of questions? About Marla. About where she's been. Who she's been talking to. Tessa opened the notebook. 3 weeks ago, she was at the bank asking about life insurance policies. We don't have life insurance on Nico. I know, but she was asking about getting some. A lot of coverage for a 14-year-old. Holden felt something cold settle in his chest. What else? She's been using the computer at the library. Has an account there under a different name. What name? Marla Stevens. Her maiden name. What's she doing on the computer? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Tessa, be careful. If she's dangerous. She's not dangerous to me. She's got no reason to hurt me. Tessa closed the notebook. But Holden, I need you to think. Has anything else been strange lately? Anything at all? Holden thought back over the past few weeks. She's been texting someone. Late at night. And she lied about where she was Tuesday afternoon. Who was she texting? I don't know. She hides her phone. What about Tuesday? Holden told her about the gas station, about Marla's grocery store trip that took 2 hours for 20 minutes of shopping. I'll check that out, Tessa said. The gas station has security cameras. Don't do anything dangerous. I won't, but I'm going to find out what happened to Nico. You really think he's alive? I have to believe that. Because if he's not, Tessa's voice broke. If he's not, then the monsters won. After Tessa left, Holden sat alone in his cell and tried to remember every detail of the past month. Had there been signs he'd missed? Clues that something was wrong. He thought about Nico's withdrawn behavior, the way the boy had pulled away from both his parents. At the time, Holden had assumed it was normal teenage stuff. But what if Nico had known something was wrong? What if he'd been scared, not of Holden, but of something else? What if Marla had been planning this for weeks? 2 days later, Tessa returned with news. She looked exhausted but determined, her bakery uniform wrinkled from a long day of investigation. I've been busy, she said, pulling out a folder of papers. And you're not going to like what I found. Tell me. Marla's been planning this for months. Maybe longer. Tessa spread photographs across the table. These are from the gas station security camera. Holden looked at the grainy images. There was Marla's Honda, and there was Marla talking to a man by the pumps. The man was tall with dark hair, wearing jeans and a baseball cap. Who is he? His name is Braylon Ketch. Moved here about 6 months ago from 2 towns over. Supposed to be a contractor, but nobody's seen him do much work. How do you know his name? Because I followed Marla yesterday. Tessa pulled out more photos, these taken with her phone from a distance. She drove out to the old Paulson ranch. You know, the one that's been empty since old man Paulson died. Holden studied the pictures. What's she doing there? Meeting with this Braylon guy. They spent 2 hours inside the ranch house. 2 hours doing what? I don't know. But when they came out, Marla looked upset, like they'd been arguing. This doesn't prove anything about Nico. Maybe not. But I also talked to Lance. Unofficially. What did he say? The blood at the cabin? It was definitely human, and it matched Nico's type. But Lance says the pattern was wrong. What do you mean? He says it looks staged, like someone had poured blood in specific places instead of it happening naturally from an attack. Hope flared in Holden's chest. So Nico might be alive. Maybe. But there's more. Tessa leaned closer. I broke into Marla's email account. How? She used your anniversary as her password. Not very creative. What did you find? Travel plans, fake IDs, and transfers of money to an account in Mexico. How much money? $50,000. From your joint savings account. Holden sat back hard. She cleaned us out. Almost. But here's the important part. Tessa pulled out a printed email. Look at this. The email was addressed to someone named B_Ketch47. The subject line read, Final arrangements. Holden read aloud. Everything is in place. The boy will be moved June 14th. No contact until safe. Package delivery as discussed. June 14th was yesterday, Tessa said. Package delivery. I think they moved Nico. Somewhere far away. Or they killed him. No. Tessa shook her head firmly. If they'd killed him, they would have left a body. They need him alive for some reason. What reason? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. That evening, Lance Harker came to see Holden. He looked around nervously before sitting down. I shouldn't be here, Lance said. But you are, because something about this case stinks. Lance pulled out a file. I've been doing some digging on my own time. What kind of digging? Financial records, phone records, background checks. Lance opened the file. Your wife has been very busy. Tell me, 3 months ago, she opened a credit card in your name. Ran up $15,000 in charges. For what? Cash advances mostly. And payments to a private investigator in Portland. A pie? For what? Insurance fraud investigation services. Specifically, how to fake a death and collect on policies. Holden felt the blood drain from his face. She took out life insurance on Nico. 3 policies. Different companies. Total value, $200,000. When the applications were filed 6 weeks ago. All approved last week. She planned this. Looks like it. But there's more. Lance pulled out phone records. She's been calling the same number every day for 2 months. The number belongs to Braylon Kesh. Tessa found him. He's part of this. I know. I ran his background. He's got priors for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Did 3 years in Oregon State for insurance scams. So this is what he does. Looks like it. But here's the thing, Holden. If they fake Nico's death for insurance money, they need him alive until the policies pay out. How long does that take? Usually 30 days after filing the claim. But if there's suspicion of foul play, it can take months. So Nico might be alive. He might be. But time's running out. Once those policies pay, they have no reason to keep him around. Holden gripped the table. We have to find him. I've been trying. But I need more than suspicion. I need proof. Then let's get it. Lance was quiet for a moment. There might be a way. But it's risky. Tell me. Braylon Ketch has been seen around the old lumber mill outside town. Place has been abandoned for years, but someone's been using the buildings. You think that's where they're keeping Nico? Maybe. But I can't search it without a warrant, and I don't have enough for a warrant. But I'm not a cop. No, you're not. Lance stood up, and I never suggested anything. We never had this conversation. After Lance left, Holden paced his cell like a caged animal. His son was out there somewhere, possibly alive, possibly in danger. And he was stuck behind bars, helpless, but maybe not completely helpless. Lance found Tessa waiting by his patrol car when his shift ended at midnight. She was parked in the shadows behind the police station, her face pale in the streetlight. We need to talk, she said. Tessa, I can't. I found him. Lance stopped walking. Found who? Nico. I know where he is. Get in the car. They drove in silence until they were outside town. Then Lance pulled over on a dirt road near the old lumber mill. Talk, he said. I've been watching the Paulson Ranch. Braylon goes there every day around noon, stays for an hour, then leaves. So today I waited until he left, then I went up to the house. Tessa, that's breaking and entering. I didn't break anything. The door was unlocked. She pulled out her phone and showed him pictures. Look, the photos showed a cluttered room with camping supplies, boxes of food, and a sleeping bag on the floor. In one corner was a stack of drawing pads and art supplies. Nico's sketchbooks, Tessa said. I'd recognize his work anywhere. Lance studied the photos. This doesn't prove he's alive. Then explain this. Tessa showed him another picture. Fresh food in the refrigerator, dirty dishes in the sink, a glass of water still sitting on the table. Someone's living there. A 14-year-old someone who likes to draw and eats peanut butter sandwiches with the crust cut off. Lance was quiet for a long moment. Even if you're right, I can't search that property without a warrant. Then don't search it officially. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that tomorrow at noon, when Braylon makes his daily visit, you might happen to be in the area, and you might hear something suspicious. A cry for help? Maybe. Lance looked at her. You want me to manufacture probable cause. I want you to save a child's life. If I'm wrong, if we're wrong, my career is over. If we're right and do nothing, Nico dies. Lance started the car. What time did you say Braylon usually shows up? The next day at 11:45 a.m., Lance parked his patrol car a quarter mile from the Paulson Ranch and walked through the woods. Tessa was already there, hidden behind a fallen log with a clear view of the house. He's late, she whispered. Maybe he's not coming. He'll come. He comes every day. At 12:20, they heard a truck engine. Braylon's blue pickup came down the dirt road and parked behind the house. He got out carrying a bag from the diner in town. Food delivery, Lance murmured. They watched Braylon go into the house. 5 minutes later, they heard shouting. No, I want to go home. The voice was young, frightened, and unmistakably Nico's. That's my probable cause, Lance said, drawing his service weapon that he approached the house carefully, Tessa behind him. Through a window, they could see Braylon standing over a thin figure curled on a couch. I said, eat it, Braylon was saying. I'm not hungry. You'll eat when I tell you to eat. Lance kicked in the front door. Police. Nobody move. Braylon spun around, his hand going his waistband. You can't be here. Hands where I can see them. You don't have a warrant. I have exigent circumstances. There's a child in danger. Nico looked up from the couch, his face thin and pale. When he saw Lance, he started crying. Deputy Harker? Is my dad okay? Your dad's fine, buddy. Are you hurt? No, but I want to go home. Braylon raised his hand slowly. This isn't what it looks like. Really? What does it look like? The kid was in an accident. I was helping. By keeping him prisoner. He's not a prisoner. Then why was he yelling for help? Braylon didn't answer. Lance cuffed him and called for backup, then knelt beside Nico. The boy was thin and dirty, but otherwise seemed unharmed. How long have you been here? Lance asked. I don't know. Days. Maybe a week. Nico wiped his nose. Mom said you'd arrest Dad if I didn't stay here. She said Dad was dangerous. Your dad's not dangerous, Nico. He's been looking for you. Really? Really? He never stopped believing you were alive. Tessa came over and hugged Nico carefully. We're going to take you home. What about Mom? Lance and Tessa exchanged glances. We'll worry about that later. The news of Nico's rescue spread through Willow Creek faster than wildfire. By evening, reporters had set up outside the police station, their cameras capturing every person who went in or out. Holden sat in the same visiting room where he'd met with Tessa, but this time Nico was across from him. The boy looked smaller than he remembered, fragile in a way that made Holden's chest tight with anger. I'm sorry, Dad, Nico said quietly. For what? For believing her. For thinking you were dangerous. You don't apologize for being scared. And you don't apologize for trusting your mother. She lied to me. I know. She said you'd hurt her if I came home. She said you'd lost your job and were drinking. None of that was true. I know that now. Nico looked up at him. Are you coming home? Soon. They have to sort out some legal stuff first. Will Mom be there? Holden was quiet for a moment. I don't think so. Good. I don't want to see her. The hatred in his son's voice was startling. Nico, she let me think you were going to hurt me. She let me be scared for nothing. People do terrible things when they're confused. She wasn't confused. She planned it. Holden studied his son's face. What makes you say that? Because I heard her talking to Braylon. They were planning to move me somewhere far away after the police stopped looking. What else did you hear? They talked about money. Insurance money. And they talked about you. What did they say about me? Nico's face hardened in a way that reminded Holden of himself. That you deserved what was happening. That you'd always been weak. The words hit like a physical blow. Holden kept his expression neutral, but inside, something cold and final was settling into place. She doesn't deserve forgiveness, Nico said. No, Holden agreed. She doesn't. 2 hours later, Holden walked out of the Willow Creek jail, a free man. The charges had been dropped. Braylon was in custody, and the district attorney was calling it a tragic misunderstanding. Outside, reporters shouted questions, but Holden ignored them. Lance drove him home through streets lined with neighbors and curious onlookers. How are you holding up? Lance asked. I'm fine. You don't look fine. I'm alive. My son's alive. That's what matters. What about Marla? Holden was quiet for a long moment. What about her? She's been staying at the Comfort Inn since yesterday. Hasn't tried to contact you or Nico. Good. Holden, I know you're angry. You don't know anything about how I feel. Lance pulled into Holden's driveway. The house looked the same, but somehow different. Like a place where he used to live instead of home. The media is going to want statements, Lance said. From you, from Nico, from Marla. They can want whatever they like. You should probably get a lawyer. Probably. Lance turned off the engine. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I should have believed you from the start. You did your job. My job was to find the truth. You found it eventually, after your son spent a week thinking his father was a monster. Holden looked at his oldest friend. That wasn't your fault. Feels like it was. It was Marla's fault. And his. Braylon. Yeah. He's going away for a long time. Kidnapping, conspiracy, fraud. Not long enough. Lance was quiet. Don't do anything stupid, Holden. I wouldn't dream of it. The next morning, Holden sat at his kitchen table drinking coffee and reading the newspaper coverage of Nico's rescue. The articles painted him as a wrongfully accused father, Nico as a brave survivor, and Marla as a troubled woman who'd made terrible choices. None of them mentioned insurance money. His phone rang. Marla's number. Hello, he said. Holden. Her voice was shaky. I'm so sorry. I was confused, scared. I didn't know what I was doing. Where are you? At the motel. Holden, can we talk? I need to explain. There's nothing to explain. Please. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. but we can fix this. Holden almost laughed. Fix this? I love you. I love Nico. I wasn't thinking clearly. You took out life insurance policies on our son. Silence on the other end. You hired a private investigator to help you fake his death. More silence. You let me sit in jail for 3 days while our son was being held prisoner. Holden, you don't get to apologize your way out of this. What do you want from me? I want you gone. This is my home, too. Not anymore. Marla's voice changed, became harder. You can't just throw me out. I have rights. You kidnapped our son. I didn't kidnap anyone. Braylon took him. I was a victim, too. Try selling that story to someone who believes it. The insurance policies haven't been claimed. I never filed a death certificate. Because you got caught. Because I changed my mind. Holden hung up. An hour later, Tessa arrived with groceries and news. Marla's been busy, she said, unpacking food. Called 3 lawyers this morning. How do you know that? Because Mrs. Patterson saw her at the law offices downtown. She's trying to find someone to represent her. Good luck with that. She also went to the bank. Holden looked up from his coffee. What for? I don't know. But she was there for over an hour. The insurance policies. What about them? She's probably trying to claim them. If Nico was declared dead, even for a few days, she might argue that's enough. Tessa sat down across from him. Can she do that? I don't know. But I'm not going to let her profit from this. What are you thinking? Holden was quiet for a moment. I'm thinking Marla's always been greedy. And greedy people make mistakes. That afternoon, Holden called his insurance agent. Mr. Voss, the agent said, I'm so glad your son is safe. This whole situation has been terrible. It has. But I need to ask you about something. Of course. The life insurance policies on Nico. Are they still active? Well, no death certificate was filed. So yes, they're still active. What would happen if something happened to them? If they were canceled or changed? Any changes would need both parents' signatures. Unless there's a court order. And if they were canceled today, there would be a grace period. 30 days before the cancellation takes effect. What if someone tried to claim them during that grace period? That would be insurance fraud. A serious felony. I see. Thank you. That evening, Holden sat down with Nico to discuss what would happen next. We're going to have to testify, he told his son. In court, when they try Braylon and your mother. Will I have to see her? Probably. I don't want to. I know. But it's important that people hear what happened to you. Nico nodded. What will happen to her? I don't know. Prison, probably. Good. Nico, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Okay. Did your mother ever say anything about insurance money? About what would happen if people thought you were dead? Nico thought for a moment. She talked to Braylon about it. Said something about policies that would pay out if I was gone. How much? A lot. Like, enough to buy a house somewhere else. Did she say where? Mexico, I think. Or maybe Costa Rica. Holden felt the last piece of the puzzle click into place. Thank you for telling me. Dad, yeah. I'm glad you didn't give up on me. I never would. Even when everyone thought you were guilty. Even then. That night, after Nico went to bed, Holden made a phone call. Marla, it's me. Holden. Her voice was cautious. I didn't think you'd call back. I've been thinking about what you said. About fixing this. Really, the insurance policies have to be dealt with. If we don't cancel them, there could be legal problems. What kind of problems? The investigation is ongoing. If prosecutors think we were trying to defraud the insurance companies, they might press charges against both of us. Both of us. I'm the other policyholder. They could say I wasn't on it. Silence. We need to meet, Holden said. Tonight, to sign the cancellation papers. Where? The house. Nico's staying at Tessa's tonight. I'll be there in an hour. After she hung up, Holden made another call. Lance, it's Holden. I need a favor. Marla arrived at 9 p.m. driving a rental car. She parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, checking her appearance in the rearview mirror. When she got out, she was wearing a blue dress and heels, like she was going to dinner instead of meeting the husband she'd betrayed. Holden watched from the living room window as she walked to the door. She moved carefully, like someone aware they might be walking into a trap. Hello, Marla, he said when he opened the door. Holden. She stepped inside, looking around the house like she was seeing it for the first time. Everything looks the same. Did you expect it to change? I don't know what I expected. She followed him to the kitchen, where papers were spread out on the table. Insurance documents, cancellation forms, legal paperwork. This is everything, she asked. Everything we need to sign. Marla sat down and read through the documents carefully. If we cancel these policies, we won't get any money back. I don't want money back. Holden, we paid $15,000 in premiums. I don't care. $15,000. Blood money. She looked up at him. It doesn't have to be blood money. Nico's alive. No thanks to you. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Marla set down the papers. You're never going to forgive me, are you? No, not even if I explain why I did it. There's no explanation that makes this right. I was unhappy, Holden. We both were. The marriage was over, had been over for years. So you decided to frame me for murder. I decided to start over. Somewhere else. With someone who understood me. Braylon. Yes. A convicted felon. A man who made me feel alive again. Holden sat down across from her. And Nico. Nico would have been fine. We were going to take him with us. After letting him think his father was a monster. Children adapt. The casual way she said it made Holden's stomach turn. You really don't see what you did wrong. I see that I got caught. Is that all? Marla was quiet for a moment. I see that I married the wrong man. And I see that I married a stranger. She picked up a pen and started signing the cancellation forms. There. Are you happy now? Not yet. What else do you want? I want you to admit what you really planned. I told you. You told me lies. You planned to kill Nico after the insurance paid out. Marla's pen stopped moving. That's not true. Braylon told the police everything. He's trying to make a deal. He's lying. Is he? Because according to him, the plan was to keep Nico alive just long enough to collect the money, then stage another accident. Holden, no. A drowning, maybe. Or a car accident. Something that would look like bad luck. Marla stood up quickly. I would never hurt my son. You already did hurt him. I was protecting him. From what? From you. From this life. From growing up in a dead-end town with a dead-end father. The words hit like a slap. A dead-end father who worked every day to support his family. A father who never had any ambition. Who was content to weld pipes and drink beer and watch television until he died. A father who loved his son. Love isn't enough, Holden. Love doesn't pay for college or travel or any of the things that make life worth living. So you decided to take those things. I decided to make them possible. By killing your husband and son. By starting over with people who deserve better. Holden stared at his wife. You really believe that, don't you? That we deserve this. I believe that everyone deserves to be happy, even if it means destroying other people's lives. Even then, the confession hung between them like a poison cloud. Holden reached into his pocket and pulled out a small recording device. Thank you, he said, turning it off. Marla's face went white. You recorded me. Every word. That's illegal. Oregon's a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of. You tricked me. I learned from the best. Marla grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I'm leaving. No, you're not. She turned around. You can't stop me. Actually, I can. As if summoned by his words, car doors slammed outside. Through the window, Marla could see police cars in the driveway. You called them. I told Lance you'd be here. Told him you might try to run. I haven't done anything illegal tonight. Conspiracy to commit murder is still illegal. Even if you don't go through with it. Lance appeared in the doorway, his service weapon drawn, but pointed at the ground. Behind him were two state police detectives. Marla Voss. One of them said, You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and child endangerment. I want a lawyer. You'll get one. As they cuffed her, Marla looked back at Holden. This isn't over. Yes, it is. I'll fight this. I'll fight you. Good luck with that. After they took her away, Holden sat alone in his kitchen. The insurance forms were still spread out on the table, most of them signed. He gathered them up and put them in a folder. Tomorrow he would mail them to the insurance companies. The policies would be canceled, the money returned to the corporations that had never been in any real danger of losing it. But tonight, he just sat in the quiet house and tried to remember what peace felt like. The trial took place 6 months later in the Willow Creek courthouse, a small brick building that hadn't seen this much excitement since the Hendersons' property dispute in 1987. Media trucks lined Main Street, and reporters interviewed anyone willing to talk about the Voss family. Holden sat in the front row behind the prosecutor's table, wearing his best suit and a grim expression. Nico sat beside him, nervous but determined to testify. Braylon Ketch had pled guilty to kidnapping and conspiracy charges in exchange for 20 years in prison and his testimony against Marla. His lawyer had argued that Marla was the mastermind, that Braylon was just a weak man led astray by a manipulative woman, that Marla's defense attorney tried a different approach. He painted her as a victim of Braylon's manipulation, a confused woman who'd been coerced into going along with a plan she never really understood. But the evidence was overwhelming. The insurance policies, the fake IDs, the money transfers, the recorded confession. Witness after witness took the stand to describe Marla's lies, her careful planning, her cold calculation. When Nico testified, the courtroom was silent except for the sound of his young voice describing his week in captivity. "She told me Dad was dangerous," he said, "that he'd hurt me if I came home. But Dad never hurt anybody." "Did you believe her?" the prosecutor asked. "At first, because she's my mom. You're supposed to believe your mom. When did you stop believing her?" "When I heard her talking to Braylon about money, about how much the insurance would pay when people thought I was dead. How did that make you feel? Like I wasn't her son anymore. Like I was just something worth money." When Holden testified, he kept his voice steady and his answers short. Yes, he'd suspected his wife was having an affair. No, he'd never threatened her or their son. Yes, he'd known something was wrong, but hadn't imagined anything like this. "Mr. Voss," the defense attorney said during cross-examination, "isn't it true that your marriage was troubled?" "Yes." "And that you and your wife had been growing apart?" "Yes." "And that you have a quick temper?" "I don't think so." "Never lost your temper with your wife or son?" "Everyone loses their temper sometimes." "But you never hurt them?" "Never. Not even when you found out about the affair." Holden was quiet for a moment. "I was angry when I found out, but I never hurt anyone." "What did you want to do to the man who was sleeping with your wife?" "Objection," the prosecutor said. "Relevance goes to the defendant's state of mind," the defense attorney argued. "I'll allow it," the judge said. Holden looked directly at Marla. "I wanted him to pay for what he'd done. To my family. To my son. Pay how? Through the legal system. Through justice. Not through violence." "No, even though he kidnapped your son?" "Especially then." When Marla took the stand in her own defense, she wore a conservative black dress and spoke in a soft, regretful voice. She admitted to the affair, to the insurance policies, even to helping plan Nico's disappearance. But she maintained that it had all been Braylon's idea. "He said Holden was dangerous," she testified. "He said if we didn't get Nico away from him, something terrible would happen." "But you had no evidence your husband was dangerous," the prosecutor said during cross-examination. "He'd been angry lately. Violent." "Violent how?" "He threw things. Slammed doors." "Did he ever hit you?" "No." "Did he ever hit your son?" "No." "Did he ever threaten to hit either of you?" "Not directly." "So when you say he was violent, you mean he slammed doors?" "It was more than that." "What was it exactly?" Marla was quiet for a long moment. "It was a feeling that he was capable of violence." "Based on what?" "Based on the way he looked at me sometimes." "How did he look at you?" "Like he hated me." "Mrs. Voss, did it ever occur to you that your husband might have good reason to hate you?" "Objection." Sustained. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, their faces were solemn. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of child endangerment, we find the defendant guilty." Marla showed no emotion as the verdicts were read. She sat straight in her chair, her hands folded in her lap, like she was listening to a weather report. Judge Morrison scheduled sentencing for the following week. "Mrs. Voss," he said, "you'll remain in custody until that time." As the bailiff led Marla away, she looked back one last time at Holden and Nico. Her expression was unreadable that a week later, Judge Morrison sentenced Marla to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. He called her crimes a calculated betrayal of the most fundamental bonds of family and trust. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Holden and Nico. "How does it feel to have justice?" one of them asked. "It feels like the beginning," Holden said. "The beginning of what?" "Of moving on." 1 year later, Holden stood in his backyard watching Nico paint at an easel Tessa had bought him. The boy had grown 3 inches and gained 20 pounds, and his art had evolved from dark, twisted landscapes to brighter scenes of hope and possibility. "What are you working on?" Holden asked. "The woods," Nico said. "But the way they really are. Not scary." "They're not scary. Not anymore." Tessa came out of the house, carrying a tray of lemonade. Her bakery had expanded into the empty storefront next door, and she was talking about opening a second location in the next town over. "How's the patient?" she asked, handing Holden a glass. "Healing." "And the father?" "Healing too." "Good. Because Mrs. Patterson wants to know if you're ready to start dating again." Holden nearly choked on his lemonade. "She what?" "Her niece is moving to town. A teacher. Recently divorced. Tell Mrs. Patterson I'm not ready for that. I told her you'd say that. And she said to tell you that Nico needs a mother figure." Holden looked at his son, who was pretending not to listen to the conversation. "Nico, do you need a mother figure?" "I need a normal family," Nico said without looking up from his painting. "What's normal?" "People who don't lie to each other. People who don't try to hurt each other." "That sounds reasonable. So maybe someday. But not yet." "Fair enough." That evening, after Tessa had gone home and Nico had gone to bed, Holden walked to the edge of his property where the woods began. This was where the police had found the burned cabin, where his life had nearly been destroyed by lies and greed. Now it was just trees and shadows and the sound of wind through leaves. His phone buzzed. A text message from a number he didn't recognize. "I know what you did. I know you set me up. When I get out, I'm coming for you." Holden deleted the message without responding. Marla would be in prison for 25 years. By the time she got out, Nico would be almost 40. Holden would be in his 60s. A lot could happen in 25 years. Nico appeared beside him, wearing pajamas and bare feet. "Couldn't sleep?" Holden asked. "I heard your phone buzz. Thought it might be important." "It wasn't." "Was it her?" "Yeah." "What did she say?" "Nothing that matters." Nico was quiet for a moment. "Are you scared of her?" "No." "Why not?" Holden put his arm around his son's shoulders. "Because I learned something this year." "What?" "That the truth is stronger than lies. That love is stronger than hate. And that family is stronger than anything else. Even when family hurts you, especially then." They stood together in the darkness, looking into the woods where secrets had once been buried and lies had taken root. But that was the past. The future stretched out ahead of them like an unmarked trail, full of possibility and hope. "You know what I think?" Nico said. "What?" "I think we're going to be okay." "Yeah," Holden said, tightening his grip on his son. "I think we are." In the distance, an owl called out across the forest, its voice carrying through the night like a promise that dawn would come, that new days were possible, and that sometimes the people who survive the darkness are the ones who refuse to let it win.